as I was reading the last chapters of the Revolt of the Masses, Ortega gets into becoming an individuality, and how he thinks that he sees what he calls like the tragedy of the aristocrat. Kind of is when you're an aristocrat's son, you're born into this super rich environment. You don't have to work for anything. You live your life kind of in your father's shadow, and you never really had to try because everything was given to you. So you never really spent the time to develop yourself. And on top of that, as soon as you become a man, as soon as you're able to get out in society, you gotta wear this big armor that your father has left for you, and you gotta act in society as a representative of your father and not really of yourself. And what I wanted to think about in this was he kind of suggests one of the things in individuality is, or to become an individual, to become yourself, is you need a kind of striving, you need a kind of struggle. And the problem with this, the tragedy of the aristocrat, or the aristocrat's son, is that he never got the opportunity to struggle. He never got the opportunity to develop his own capacities, which is where it's in the struggle that you develop your capacities. And so he never really becomes a full individual. He never really becomes who he is. So first, I wanted to ask, what do you think about that idea? That I think there's something to it, that's in the struggle, individuality is developed. I just generally, do you think there's something to that?
So I'll take this first. So I do think there's something to this. I guess Genghis Khan himself worried about this with his successors, actually, because by the time Genghis Khan had rounded about all of Asia and conquered most of the known world, he was worried about his sons inheriting his empire, having done none of the things that he has done, right? Struggled from nothing, living in the steppes, growing up living with like rat skins, like now they had some of the best stuff in the world. And he was actually worried about this. But if we want to go to a more concrete example, I want to take this not on the level of individuals, but on the same theme, in the level of nation states themselves. For example, on page 2101, he says this quote, human life has only progressed when the resources it could count on were balanced with the problems it met with, which is kind of weirdly abstract way to put it, but it's a theory that I've actually had myself that I was happy to see come up in Ortega. It's that the problem with Africa, if you will, or the problem with the Middle East, it's actually counterintuitive. The problem with Africa is not that it's poor. The problem with Africa is that it's too rich. But the problem with the Middle East is not that it's poor. The problem with the Middle East is that it's too rich, right? The Middle East doesn't have to struggle and strive to get money. All they have to do is get a couple pipes into the ground and pump up that oil, and then a bunch of people who sit on top don't have to develop industries inside the countries. They don't have to develop a technology industry. All they have to do is sit back and let that sweet oil money come on in. And in Africa, all they have to do is dig up some diamonds, cut down some timber, and there's some free money right there. You just pluck it from the trees. They didn't have to sit down and specialize. It was just the resources were laying all around them. And Western powers knew this well. That's why they came down and took them by force, because they knew they could take it and it was easy. Right? But there's a reason why these countries didn't develop a sophisticated infrastructure. But then if you look at the opposite side, Japan has nothing. Japan is a country with nothing. There are no natural resources here that it has access to. Japan only can do one thing. It can only manipulate it. The only natural resources it has are its people. So its people have to be highly specialized, motivated workers towards the goal of producing something very big or very complicated. Right? Taiwan is the same way. Korea is the same way. And in Ortega himself suggests Europe was the same way. He says that England was well on into the 18th century the poorest country in Western Europe. England itself was a poor country, right? But it developed an intricate military, an intricate economy, science, infrastructure. Why? Because it had to, right? It didn't have anything to depend on. It couldn't pluck the fruit from the trees. So if you can see this not only level of the aristocrat, you can see this going on in the level of the nation state itself.
Nice. So I want to ask about this a little bit. I like where you took this too. So, do you think this is going to start deviating a little bit? Sorry, but so via the struggle, you become more individual. You become more developed. So I want to ask. So let's go to Japan. Let's just take it straight to Japan. Japan is a country where people sit down and they do apply themselves to become skillful quite a lot. I mean, people become very insanely skillful at certain tasks. And it kind of led me to ask this question. If this is the case, why isn't Japan known as the country with the most individuality on the earth? Because these people are struggling. They are developing themselves quite constantly to do these tasks. And then I thought for a second, I want to ask about this. So, do you think individuality has to do with the mind? Can individuality apply to the body? So, for example, it doesn't matter who you take. Let's take Michael Jordan. Let's imagine Michael Jordan. Of course, this is not true, but let's imagine Michael Jordan in every other aspect other than his basketball playing ability, everything else, he is the most mundane individual that ever lived. He gives the average answer for everything. He is bland. He is the most bland man in the universe right up here. But he is the most awesome basketball player that ever lived. Okay, is he an individual?
Wow, you've kind of taken me aback with this question. It's a good question. It's really good. I'm tempted to say, I'm tempted to fall on each side. I'm tempted to say he still is, because I guess even the people we consider outstanding individuals are not completely unique in every way.
Yeah.
Even the people we hold up as our greatest individual, most individual people, they simply can't be individual in every single way. They'd be like aliens to us then. Some things are still familiar to us. Some way they live their life is still, sometimes even painfully familiar to us. Like some of the greatest philosophers have terrible faults. Schopenhauer and his misogyny. I mean, like, some of these aspects of them are all too common, unfortunately. So it can't be that in every single aspect that they're individual, but I guess I'm tempted to come down on yes, but I don't know. I'm not sure about this. What do you think, Jesse?
So here's my question for you. So, you said he always gives the most mundane answer. So,
yes.
But, for example, if I were to ask this Michael Jordan you've invented, what's your opinion on abortion? So what would he say?
Let's imagine that he gave you an answer that was totally predictable. In other words, it was just the answer his parents fed him when he was a kid. Just totally predictable. You could have guessed it a mile away. Okay,
so basically he has no position. What positions he has not thought out.
Exactly right. Everything he's got has been spoon-fed to him.
Okay,
except for his basketball ability.
Except for his basketball ability.
Okay, except for his basketball ability. So I might say that he is he probably has a very underdeveloped self. Is he an individual? This is as though. Okay, I don't have the Ortega background. I don't know how we've been using the word.
You don't need one for this, no.
Okay, but I'm. So it sounds more like he's a basketball playing boarder, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's really good at basketball, though. I mean, in that aspect, he's totally unique. Unlike anyone you've ever met.
I guess you just have to say he's an incredibly boring person. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think so long as he's not the board,
Yeah, yeah.
I would have to place him in the individual camp.
Would it be unfair of me to even just deny the premise and say if he was that way, he couldn't have been that great a basketball player? He would have just done what his coach said exactly,
Right.
and then not have developed his own style.
Yeah, actually, I think that sounds exactly right.
Mm.
Kind of this kind of brings us back to Japan. You said why is Japan, where devotes their time to developing capacities, is it not praised as a advanced nation in terms of individuality? But part of the reason is the way they Japan tries to stray away from specialists.
Mm.
It tries to make almighty employees. The people it really wants to develop are sent to every division.
Yeah, those are the guys who move up in the company, who are the ones who are kind of spiraling through the company.
Yeah. But even the people who are clearly not spiraling through the company, I deal with these people directly.
Mm.
They're changing positions every 3 to 4 years. It's because they still have to be able to do everything.
I've talked to people like researchers. They keep the researchers pretty much locked down unless they request to be managers. But other than that, yeah, researchers are kept pretty specialized.
Yeah.
Could it be? I don't know. I have no evidence for this, but I mean, like Japan has a Meister culture, right? Like the Germans do, the Meister, right? Japan, they were called shokunin, right? They used to have it, like at the very least. It's kind of dying away, unfortunately. It's losing one of the things that made Japan special in the first place. But like it kind of feels like maybe these Meisters, these shokunin, it seems like they are allowed to have a little more freedom, but only the people at the very top of their the class, right? The guys standing at the pinnacle, the Meisters, the shokunin, they're the guys, the master, and you are the deshi, right? They're the master, you are the disciple, and you just kind of have to bring yourself up to their level. So these guys, it feels like the guys on the top, they're pretty much allowed to do whatever the hell they want because they're the Meister. I mean, and presumably they got there because they're the Meister, right? They've done so well. At least that was the old Meister the culture that used to be in Japan, right? I don't know. It kind of feels like these people are, at least in Japan, are allowed to be a little more individual than the people that work under them. Is that a fair answer?
I think, yeah. It seems like they have a basic, once you have your flat line all of your skill points up to a certain level, well, then you're allowed to choose which stat you apply your skill points to, but you still have to have all of your skills at level 5 before you start developing one's specific skill. Is what it kind of seems to be. And with that very odd analogy, perhaps ending comments on this?
Wow, I just really flashed on the Jimquisition video about zippers and buckles and hair, because it seems like this is what this artist was trying to do. He was trying to say, here's my Batman. Where is his individuality? It's in his body.
He's trying to...
It's not in like, oh wow, that's such a difficult issue. Right? All you have to do is, in other words, individuality is craziness. Right? Look how wacky I am. Look how wacky this is. I'll just put a horn on my head and that makes me an individual.
He's different. It's the difference is in his body, though. You know what I mean? Like it's detailed, and there's crevices and in corners, and you can dig deeper and deeper in the body, but maybe not in the mind per se, in his personality per se, but in the body, it's rooted.
Right. I mean, but it is, without a doubt, it's not any Batman I've ever seen before. If I have to stand and guard against this, I mean,
yeah.
Without a doubt, I've never seen that Batman before.
Though I might throw out, people are calling him Bahamut.
Yeah.
Because it looks like I admit he does look like if you put that Batman figure in a figure of previous Final Fantasy Bahamut's, but it would not seem out of place.
Yeah.
Whereas Batman should seem out of place in a line of figures of mystical dragons.
Can I be all postmodern here and say like, well, if I was gonna be all modern, super modern, like, well, all ideas are just combinations of other ideas anyway. It's all just a meme factory, and all the ideas you think are original are just combinations of other ideas anyway.
Oh,
So,
you postmodernist, get out of here.
The meme factory continues. All they're doing is just smashing Batman and Bahamut together. So if you don't like that, then all the other individual ideas you've seen so far are just that, except they're not Bahamut. They're just something else.
Yeah. Okay. That's a very interesting point to immediately end this discussion on.
Okay.
Well, yes, no, very good point. But I think we're over. But
All right.